My younger sister hijacked our grandmother's memorial to announce she inherited her beachfront apartment, waving a letter with a fake smile. I smiled back, said nothing, and walked out. 1 hour later, I returned with a hidden journal, a notarized deed, and Grandma's final words. I still remember the salt in the air the day Grandma Eleanor gave me that old leather journal. It was soft and weathered, the corners bent from years of being stuffed in travel bags, or maybe just age. She handed it to me with her hands, those hands, slightly shaky but always gentle, and said, "Don't open this until you really need to know the truth, Melanie." Her voice had that familiar firmness, like when she used to tell me not to swim too far out at Tybee Island, even though she knew I would anyway. I didn't question her, just nodded and packed it in my overnight bag like it was any other keepsake. That was about a month before she passed away. The day she died was a quiet one. No storm, no drama, just a slow fade. And even though she was nearly 82, it still felt like a shock. She was the type of person who felt permanent, like the tide, always returning. I flew back to Savannah from my latest trip, a writing assignment in Oregon, and stayed in my tiny apartment above a bookstore near Forsyth Park. Everyone grieved in their own way. My parents buried themselves in organizing her memorial. My younger sister, Riley, didn't even fly in until the evening before the event, blaming some work crisis in Austin. We hadn't talked much in the last few years. We used to be close, but life and choices built quiet distance between us. Grandma's memorial wasn't a traditional funeral. She had requested a photography exhibit instead. "Celebrate the view, not the absence," she'd said once. My dad helped put together large prints of her beach shots: pelicans at dawn, sailboats cutting the water, sun-hazed waves that looked like melted glass. The community center was filled with soft conversations and stories from people I hadn't seen in years. I mostly kept to myself, standing near the wall of photos, my mind wandering back to all the holidays I had spent with her. Cooking low-country boil in her small kitchen, watching the sunrise from her porch swing, helping her sort through old letters and school papers she could never bring herself to throw away. And then, in the middle of the crowd, Riley stepped forward. She cleared her throat, tapped a glass with a spoon like someone giving a wedding toast, and said, "I have something I need to share." Everyone turned toward her. My stomach tightened. Her black dress looked untouched by salt or sand. Polished. Distant. "Before Grandma passed," she began, "she gave me something. A letter. She told me she wanted me to have her beachfront apartment." Murmurs rippled through the room. I froze. Riley reached into her handbag and pulled out a folded piece of paper, holding it up like a prop. "It's all here. Signed and dated. She wanted me to use it as a home base, maybe even rent it out one day. Said she trusted me to take care of it." I felt the air get heavy. Our parents looked surprised, but pleased. Some relatives nodded slowly, like they were trying to understand, while others shifted uncomfortably. Riley beamed like she'd just delivered a well-timed speech. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. But my mind was already spinning. Grandma Eleanor had been struggling with arthritis for years. Writing had become a challenge and typing nearly impossible. The last email she sent me had been riddled with typos because she couldn't manage the keyboard. She had never mentioned any changes to the apartment's ownership. Not once. Not even during our long walks or the quiet breakfasts where we sipped weak coffee and talked about everything but time. That journal. The one she gave me. My breath caught. Something about her words echoed louder now. "When you really need to know the truth." I excused myself from the exhibit quietly. I told Dad I had to check on some writing deadline. He didn't ask questions, he never did. I walked out into the warm Savannah night, the cicadas buzzing louder than usual, and drove straight home. My fingers trembled a little as I opened my travel bag and pulled out the journal. It smelled faintly of lavender and sea air, her scent. I flipped through the pages, each one blank until near the middle, where something had been carefully inserted. I found a sealed plastic folder. Inside it, a notarized deed. My name typed cleanly across the top. Transfer of property rights, Tybee Island residence, dated 8 months ago. Grandma had already given the apartment to me. Quietly, legally. There was also a letter. Handwritten, shaky, but unmistakably hers. My dearest Melanie, if you're reading this, then I'm likely gone, and I hope I gave you this in time. I want you to have the apartment. You always loved it the way I did. You cared for it, for me, for the stories that lived there. I've made the deed official, so there won't be any confusion. Riley, she's always been different. Ambitious. Restless. I suspect she might try to claim what isn't hers. She'll need something else, her own journey, not mine. But you, my sweet girl, you belong to the sea like I do. Trust what you know is true. With love, always, Grandma Eleanor. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the letter still in my lap. My heart thudded. Betrayal crept in like a slow wave, bitter and sharp. Riley hadn't just claimed something that wasn't hers. She'd lied to a room full of people. Lied to our family.
Why?
For recognition? For power? For a piece of real estate she hadn't cared about in years? Tucked in the journal's pocket was one more item, a small, gold key. I knew what it opened. Grandma's old desk at the apartment. She'd always kept a drawer locked there, called it her keeper of important things. I had no idea what was inside, but I intended to find out. I didn't go back to the memorial that night. I didn't answer my mom's texts asking if I was okay. I stayed in my apartment, turning the gold key over in my fingers, rereading the deed and the letter again and again. I wasn't just sad anymore. I was angry, and beneath the anger, something colder was starting to build. I wasn't going to let my sister take what wasn't hers. Not this time. Not without a fight. The next morning, the sky was gray, low clouds hanging over Savannah like a curtain that wouldn't rise. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept going over everything in my head. The forged letter, Riley's smug expression, the way our parents just accepted her announcement without question. I didn't know what I was more upset about, Riley's betrayal or how easily everyone seemed to believe her. Maybe both. But one thing was clear. I had the truth, and I needed to decide what to do with it. By noon, I had printed out copies of the deed and Grandma's letter and slid them back into the folder. I didn't want to carry the original documents around. I knew I'd be returning to the community center, even if the memorial was over. It wasn't about drama. I didn't want a scene. But I couldn't let this go. Grandma trusted me with the truth. I couldn't ignore that. When I arrived, most guests had gone. Only close family remained, scattered across the room, helping clean up or chatting in quiet clusters. Riley was seated on the edge of the makeshift stage, legs crossed, laughing with our cousin Dean like she hadn't just hijacked a memorial to make herself the center of attention. My parents were near the refreshment table, packing up trays. I walked in quietly, clutching the folder like a shield. Riley's eyes caught mine first. Her smile faltered for a second, then returned, tight and strained. I made my way to the center of the room and cleared my throat. Everyone turned. "I have something to share," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. Riley stood slowly, her expression shifting, cautious now. "I know," Riley said. "Grandma gave her the beachfront apartment." I began, but that's not the truth. I opened the folder, pulling out the deed and holding it up. This is the notarized property transfer. It was done 8 months ago. Grandma gave it to me, legally, quietly.
Gasps.
A silence fell over the room like a dropped curtain. She also gave me this. I held up the handwritten letter. It's in her handwriting. She explained everything. She knew Riley might try to claim the apartment. She warned me. Riley's face turned pale. "That's not possible," she said quickly. "Grandma told me." When? I cut in. "Because a month ago, she gave me this journal with all of this inside. She told me not to open it unless I needed to know the truth." My father took a step forward. "Let me see the documents," he said quietly. I handed them over. He read slowly, his brows knitting together. My mother leaned in, her hand covering her mouth as she read. I watched Riley, who looked like she was doing mental gymnastics, trying to find a way out. Finally, Dad turned to her. "Riley, do you have that letter Grandma supposedly gave you?" Riley hesitated, then opened her bag and pulled it out. A typed page. Clean signature. Too clean. Dad placed both letters side by side. His eyes darted between them, then back to Riley. This signature, this doesn't look like Mom's. Not with her arthritis. This is too smooth. Riley said nothing. Her silence was the answer. The room felt frozen. Riley, Mom said, stepping toward her. Did you forge this? Riley's jaw clenched. She looked around at the faces of our family, confused, hurt, waiting. Finally, she exhaled and said, I overheard a conversation between Grandma's lawyer and Aunt May. They said the apartment wasn't part of the estate anymore, that it had already been handled. I put it together. So, you made a fake letter? I asked, my voice quiet but firm. I didn't want to be left out, she said. You had everything with her. The memories, the holidays, the stories. I thought if I claimed it first, people would believe me. There was a long silence. I reached into the folder one last time. She left something else, I said, pulling out the sealed envelope. It's addressed to you, Riley. In her handwriting. I didn't open it. I wasn't supposed to. Riley took it with shaking hands. The room watched as she opened the flap and slid out the single page. Her eyes scanned the words, and for the first time since she arrived, she looked small, human, not polished or perfect, just hurt. She knew, Riley whispered. She knew I'd try this. Her voice cracked. What does it say? Mom asked gently. Riley looked at me, then back at the page. She said the apartment was for Melanie because she understood it, because she cared for it the way Grandma did. But she left me something else. She unfolded a small slip of paper tucked in with the letter. A check. $40,000. Gasps again. She wanted me to start the nonprofit I told her about. She remembered from that dinner we had last year. Riley's voice broke now. She said, I always chased things that didn't belong to me because I didn't believe in my own ideas. Nobody said anything. There was nothing to say. Even I felt the sting of that truth. After a long, heavy pause, our mother said, Honey, why didn't you just tell us the truth? Riley wiped her eyes. Because the truth never felt enough. And in that moment, for all my anger, I saw something I hadn't in a long time. My little sister, the one who used to trail behind me on the beach, asking why the waves didn't ever get tired. The one who always tried too hard to be enough. Maybe Grandma saw that too. Maybe that's why she left her a different kind of gift. The rest of the evening was quiet. No shouting. No storm. Just an unraveling of a lie and the painful settling of truth. I didn't speak much after that. I sat near the photo wall and looked at the one Grandma had taken of the empty porch swing facing the ocean. Later, when most people had left, Jenna, our cousin, came over and hugged me. That was brave, she whispered. And overdue. I nodded. I didn't feel brave. Just tired. I packed up my folder, the journal, and the remaining photos I had brought to the exhibit. As I left the center, I passed Riley sitting alone near the back, staring at the check like it might burn through her hands. She looked up and met my gaze. I'm sorry, Mel. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just nodded, walked out into the night, and made a decision. Tomorrow I was going to Tybee, to the apartment, to the place that had always been mine. The next morning, I drove east, the road to Tybee Island familiar and strangely comforting. The early light pushed through the fog like it was trying to wake the world up gently. I hadn't been back since Grandma passed, and something about returning now, with her letter and the truth finally out, felt heavier than I expected. As I crossed the causeway, the salt air hit me, sharp and briny, the way it always did, and I rolled down the window just to breathe it in. It felt like coming home, but also like stepping into something unfinished. The apartment looked exactly the same from the outside. Pale yellow siding, white shutters, the wind chimes Grandma had made from old silverware still clinking softly in the breeze. I parked, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. It was like she never left. The sun filtered through gauzy curtains, laying soft patterns on the wooden floors. Her wide-brimmed beach hats hung on the same wall hooks. The shelf above the TV still had her seashell collection, every piece labeled in her delicate cursive. I stood in the middle of the room for a long moment, just letting it all settle in. The quiet wasn't empty, it was full. Full of her. I went straight to the study. Her old writing desk sat in the corner, its roll top curved like a secret waiting to be opened. I knelt down and found the drawer, the one she always kept locked. I pulled out the golden key from my pocket and slid it into the keyhole. It turned with a soft click. Inside were folders.
Dozens of them.
Each one labeled with a name. Cousins, aunts, uncles, old students, neighbors. I found mine easily, Melanie. It was thick with photos, clipped articles about my travel stories, emails I'd printed for her, even postcards I'd sent from Italy, Greece, Brazil. She had saved everything. I smiled through tears. Then I found Riley's folder. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to look. But curiosity, or maybe something deeper, pushed me forward. Inside were screenshots of her coding bootcamp graduation, a printed email from her internship offer, and a blurry photo from that dinner she had mentioned, the one where she first told Grandma about her idea for an eco-tech nonprofit. She had called it Green Bite Futures. I remembered now, vaguely, how surprised I was Riley had taken the conversation seriously. But Grandma had. She believed in both of us, just in different ways. I closed the door gently and sat back. I had come to claim what was mine, yes, but I also felt like I had stepped into a museum of love, quiet, private love. Grandma didn't shout her affections. She kept them here, tucked into drawers and journal pockets and letters that arrived when you needed them most. Later that afternoon, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, letting the ocean breeze wrap around me like a hug. My phone buzzed beside me. Riley. Her message was short. Can we talk? At the apartment? I stared at it for a while. I wasn't ready. Not really. But something about the look on her face that night and the letter Grandma left her. I couldn't ignore it either. I waited 15 minutes before replying. Tomorrow.
Noon.
The next day, she arrived exactly on time. She looked nervous. Not polished this time. No heels, no carefully chosen words. Just Riley. Her hair in a messy bun, eyes tired, hands fidgeting. I didn't make her wait on the porch. I let her in. This place looks the same, she said quietly, stepping inside like she was afraid to touch anything. That's the point, I replied, watching her as she glanced around. She sat on the couch. I stayed in the chair across from her. We didn't speak for a while. Finally, she said, I don't even know where to start. Try. She looked up, eyes rimmed red. I'm sorry, Melanie. I didn't come here to beg or to justify what I did. I came because I needed to say it. I betrayed you. I lied to our whole family. I forged something that didn't belong to me, and I hurt the one person who always made time for Grandma when I didn't. Her voice broke. I said nothing. I always felt like I missed the boat, she continued. You had this bond with her I couldn't touch. I was too busy chasing promotions, dates, tech conferences. When I finally wanted to be part of it, it felt like there was no room left. There was, I said simply. You just didn't walk through the door. She wiped her face and nodded. I know that now. I stood and walked into the study. When I returned, I handed her the folder labeled Riley. She kept this, I said. All of it. She didn't forget you. Riley opened the folder slowly, scanning the contents. Her face twisted with emotion. She saved this. She believed in you. She just didn't want you to copy someone else's path. For a long time, Riley didn't speak. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. I used part of the check, she said. Registered Green Bite Futures officially. We're holding our first eco-hackathon in Atlanta next month. I didn't do it for her or even for you. I did it because I needed to prove I was more than just someone who stole things. I took a deep breath. Good. That's what she wanted. A real future. Not a shortcut. We sat there, the two of us, staring out the window at the shifting water. The silence wasn't angry anymore. It was heavy, yes, but real. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, she said finally. I just Want to be allowed back in. I reached for the drawer where Grandma kept an old wall calendar, now mostly empty. I handed it to her. I've marked weekends I'll be up here. Maintenance, beach cleanups, stuff she would have loved. If you want to help, mark your name on it. Her eyes widened slightly. You're serious? I nodded. I don't trust you yet, Riley. But I'm willing to try. Because she would have wanted that. And in her eyes, for the first time in years, I saw something that wasn't ambition or competition. I saw hope. We didn't hug. We didn't cry together like in the movies. But when she left that afternoon, I knew something had shifted.
Slowly.
But maybe for good. 2 weeks later, Riley's name showed up on the calendar.
Twice.
I had marked the weekends I planned to be at the apartment for maintenance and coastal cleanup events, just like I said I would. She added hers next to mine in neat handwriting, no flourish, no comment, just her name and the date. When I saw it, I didn't know whether to feel hopeful or wary. Maybe both. But I left it there, no questions asked. The first weekend came fast. I stocked up on cleaning supplies, paint samples, and tools. The old shutters needed work, and Grandma's flower boxes had started to rot. I didn't expect Riley to show up, honestly. Part of me thought she'd flake at the last minute or cancel with some last-minute tech emergency. But she didn't. She arrived early that Saturday morning, holding a box of pastries and 2 iced coffees like she was trying not to look too eager. Figured you'd still be living off black coffee and toast, she said, offering me one of the drinks. Not far off, I replied, accepting it without a smile, but also without tension. We got to work. We spent hours repairing the shutters, sanding and repainting them the pale blue Grandma loved. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was simply focused. We spoke in small, necessary exchanges at first. Then something softened. She asked about my recent writing trip to Utah. I asked how the hackathon planning was going. It wasn't easy, this slow rebuild. But it was honest. During a break, we sat on the porch swing. She sipped her coffee and glanced out at the horizon. You think she knew this would happen? She asked quietly. I looked at her. Grandma always planned ahead. I think she hoped it wouldn't, but she was prepared in case it did. Riley gave a soft laugh, not mocking.
Yeah.
That sounds like her. Later that afternoon, I opened the storage closet beside the study. Inside were boxes we hadn't gone through since the memorial. Old journals, scrapbooks, and a weathered wooden crate marked Legacy. I pulled it down, and Riley helped me carry it to the living room. Inside, we found more of Grandma's treasures, handwritten recipes, worn photo albums, and another smaller box. This one wasn't locked. Inside were voice recordings saved on a tiny USB drive labeled Messages for When I'm Gone. Riley and I exchanged a glance. Should we? She asked. I nodded. We plugged it into my laptop and hit play. Grandma's voice filled the room. Warm, clear, a little tired but steady. If you're listening to this, it means I've moved on to whatever comes next. Don't get too sentimental. I had a good run. A chuckle. Melanie, Riley, if you're both hearing this together, I'm proud of you. I didn't leave that apartment to divide you. I left it to Melanie, because she cherished it. But Riley, I didn't forget you. I wanted you to have a reason to build something all your own. Riley's breath hitched. Families aren't perfect, Grandma continued. We break, we fight, we sometimes betray. But what matters is whether we show up when it counts. That's what makes us whole again. The recording clicked off. Riley was crying silently. I didn't speak. I let the weight of those words hang in the room. That night, Riley stayed over. She took the guest room that still smelled faintly of sunscreen and eucalyptus. We didn't talk much after dinner. Just sat on the porch, watched the tide go out, and let the silence speak for us. It wasn't reconciliation yet, but it was something. Days passed. The second weekend came. This time, Riley brought a friend from her nonprofit team to help with organizing a coastal cleanup. I watched her direct the group with purpose, different from how I remembered her. Not the showy Riley from Austin cocktail parties. Just real. She pulled me aside afterward and handed me a flyer. First official Greenbite hackathon.
Atlanta.
Want to come? I raised an eyebrow. You're inviting me? I'm asking, she said. Not because I want you to write about it or boost our numbers. Just because I'd like you there. I folded the flyer into my pocket. We'll see. After everyone left, I wandered into the study again. I opened the drawer, not to look through folders, but to put something in. A photo. One of me and Riley from the cleanup event, laughing. Both of us soaked after a sudden wave caught our feet. Grandma would have liked that photo. She would have seen something healing in it. The next week, I made the drive to Atlanta. I didn't tell Riley I was coming. I just showed up. The event was buzzing with young minds and wild ideas, and I could see her thriving. She was in her element, talking innovation, sustainability, coding. I watched from a distance for a while, then approached. She spotted me and smiled.
A real one this time.
No performance. You came. I said maybe. That's basically a yes. I handed her a small wrapped package. Inside was a framed photo. Grandma on the beach, holding a notebook, barefoot and beaming.
For your new office, I said.
Wherever it ends up. Riley looked down at it, then back at me. She'd be proud of you. Of both of us, I said. We stood there, side by side, not needing to fill the space with more. It's been months since then. The apartment on Tybee Island is still mine. I spend time there often, writing, restoring, remembering. But I'm not alone anymore. Riley visits. She brings volunteers, interns, even students from her tech programs. She helps run workshops, organizes cleanups. Sometimes we just sit in the porch swing like old times, staring out at the waves. We're not the same as we were, and that's a good thing. People still ask me what Grandma Eleanor left us. I always say, not just a place. She left us the truth. She left us with broken pieces and the tools to mend them. She left us each other, even if we almost lost that along the way. Real inheritance isn't always what's written on paper. It's what stays with you when the dust settles. It's the second chance you didn't know you'd need, and the grace to take it when it comes. This was mine, and it became Riley's too. In the end, we didn't just rebuild a house. We rebuilt something far harder, trust. And that, more than anything, was Grandma's final gift.